warm welcome to episode 18 of our Little Harbour Homewares shop project. Now in today's episode I'm going to be showing you how to make a coffee table, a blanket chest and a couple of little display tables as well, which we're going to use in front of the first floor windows so that we can create some really lovely window displays to be seen from the outside. So we've got a lot to do, we'd better get started.
Okay, so we're going to make a start with the blanket chest. So begin by cutting and preparing all of the pieces needed apart from the lid insert. And we'll cut that piece once the actual chest is constructed and then we can get an exact measurement. Now we're going to begin by attaching the mouldings to the top and bottom of the side pieces. So I've got my clamps ready here to secure those whilst the glue dries. So begin by applying glue along the back of the first moulding. Lay that along the top edge. I'm just going to grab a piece of spare strip wood and then I'm going to use that along the top there just to make sure I've got a nice flush edge. So push both pieces up against it, like that, and then remove your excess glue. Turn around and do the same at the other end. Again, I'm always checking for the nicest side of the moulding, and if there's any little dents or chips in the wood, always make sure you stick those downwards, and then you'll always have the nicest side of the wood facing forwards or visible. Just get rid of a bit of that glue before I put that strip there, or I might stick them together. Again, push both pieces up against the strip, remove the excess. I've still got a bit of glue down there actually. That as well, and then apply your clamps. If you haven't got clamps, you can use clothes pegs or clothes pins. Just stuck the end of the clamp in the glue there. So that piece can be put to one side to dry, and then do the same with your remaining side piece. We're now going to attach the mouldings to the back and front pieces. So take a back or a front and you'll have three pieces of this size, the back, the front and the base. Two of your back mouldings and three of the vertical mouldings. And we're going to begin by making pencil marks on the back piece for placement of the vertical mouldings. And the first one is going to be 14mm from the left hand edge, and then 32mm and 51mm, and I'll give you that as well in inches. So that is 9/16, 1 1/4 inches and 2 inches, like that. Turn the piece and join those lines up. Place the rule just below the lines to allow for the thickness of your pencil. Turn that piece back the right way, get those out of the way, and we're going to begin by attaching the top and bottom moulding. So again, just along the top and bottom edges. Again, check for the nicest side. Pop that into place. I'm going to bring that spare strip in again. Remove the excess glue. Same at the other side. I've got a little bit of a chip out of the wood there, so I'm going to glue that bit down. Like that. And then turn the the piece back around so that your first pencil mark is the one that we made from the left hand side, and we're going to be putting these vertical divides to the right hand side of each pencil line. So you must make sure that your first sort of gap is the narrowest gap, and then you'll have a wider gap at the end there. And what we're going to do is just double check the size of the vertical moulding. So as you can see, mine is a little bit long there, so I'm just going to use my craft knife just to trim a little bit off the end. Try it into place, and then you can apply your glue. And again, I've said it before, but when you cut by hand, it is difficult to get everything exactly the right size. So sometimes you are going to be a millimetre or half a millimetre out. So I'm placing that towards the right of that pencil line, but so that I'm sort of just hiding the pencil line as well, underneath the strip there. And remove your excess glue. Press down and then check the size of your next strip. And again, that one's a little bit long as well. That's a bit of a tight fit, but I prefer them to be tight than have too much gap in. I didn't think I was going to need any glue then, so tight in there. That into place as well. The excess glue, and then the final one again to the right of the little pencil line. Again, a little bit too long. Now we can clamp all those pieces down. I'm just thinking, I've got so many pieces in clamps at the moment, I'm not sure if I've got enough left in my pot. I might have some dry pieces that I can take a few clamps from. That one hasn't got a good end on it. Okay, so I've already done my front piece, so that should be dry by now. I'll get the clamps from there. That's why it's always good to have a lot of these little clamps. And I'm sticking them over the joins of the vertical ones, and that will hold everything in place then. Like that. Okay, so that piece can be left to dry as well. Do the same with your front piece, and once that's dry we can begin construction. Once all of the mouldings have dried into place, sand along each edge of each piece. So against your sandpaper flat on your work surface, just sweep it along in the one direction, and that will just ensure that there are no overhanging mouldings. And I've done each of my pieces, so we can now attach a leg to each side of each side piece. So apply glue along both sides of each side piece. And I've got my piece of spare strip wood here, and we'll use that again to make sure that we're getting a nice flush edge along the top. So press the first leg into place. Remaining one there. And then bring in that spare piece of strip and press all of the pieces up against it. Press flat against your work surface at the same time, and as you're pressing the legs, make sure you're not sort of slanting them inwards, as we won't have that nice square top. Hold on to that and remove your excess glue. You can then slide that piece along your work surface, and that can be left to dry, and you can do the same thing with the remaining side. So we're now ready to begin construction, And we're going to start by turning over one of the side pieces and attaching one of the panels, and it will sit along the join between the side piece and the back leg there. So apply glue along the side. Remove the dust and then pop that into place so that you're lining it up with the side as well, so that you've got nice flush edges at the top and bottom. Make sure it's pressed right against that join. Give it a good press. Just get rid of that bit of glue. Remember to remove the excess glue from around the back as well. And if I just pick that up and show you, you can see how that's attached there. So it's sitting towards the front edge of that leg, and I'm sure you sort of know how these things go together by now. We're then going to attach the bottom piece, and that will sit on the inside edge of the joined pieces like that. So apply glue to a short and a long edge. Get it lined up with that bottom of the side piece first. Use your finger to make sure you've got a nice flush join, and then pull that back piece in like that, and that then squares the piece off. Have a look round the back, make sure that's sitting where it should be. I think I just need to come out in that bottom corner. You normally find when it tries to push in, it's always in that sort of corner bit. Make sure that's sitting correctly and then push that back bit in. Knock that out a bit then. So the front piece sits in the same position as the back piece. So if you begin by applying glue along, I can't remember now which is the applying and the removing, cocktail stick. So apply a bit of glue along the front edge of that base piece. And then along one side your front panel. Put that into place. Make sure you've got that nice flush edge at the top there, and then again you can pull that in to meet that bottom piece, and that squares it off. Press down at the same time. This is another of those really simple little constructions which you can use for chests and trunks and things like that. Just basically making a box with legs in this case. Again, because I'm sort of rushing on and not letting the glue settle in between, it's sort of trying to come apart. So let's just press and hold for a moment and then we'll continue. My battery went then as well, so that was pretty good timing. So now apply glue to the open edge, and then we can attach that remaining side, and then we'll grab a bit of masking tape and secure it all together. Bring that side in. Make sure you've got a nice flush line along the top, and that the front and back pieces are sitting on the legs. So as you can see I'm doing, you may just need to sort of pull them apart to get them into the right position. Make sure you've got a flush line along the top as well, and then that should just be sitting nicely at the bottom there. So just have a check around the other side, and then again give that a press. So I can very carefully just pick that up. Get rid of the excess glue, and then we can get the tape on. Okay, so stand that back on the first side, and then we'll put a bit of tape straight over that side. Pull it firmly, but be careful not to knock anything out of place. Like that. and that can then be left to dry. I'm just sort of giving it all a final press. And then as we can still get to the top, what I want to do now is just measure the inside area. So length and width, and it should be the same as your bottom piece, but the only reason it will differ if your front and back piece are slightly on the inside of the legs, which can happen, and I can see even there that mine has gone in just a tiny bit there, so I'll just need to cut mine a little bit smaller by about not even 1/2 millimetre. So measure and then deduct that sort of 1/4 millimetre, because what we're going to do now is cut a piece from the 2.5 millimetre sheet wood, which will fit in there, and then we'll glue that to the inside of the lid, and that acts as a sort of stop to stop the lid from moving around. So measure the open area, deduct a 1/4 millimetre from each measurement, so your length and your width, and then cut your, I can't remember what I've called it now, lid insert to that size. And there's my piece there, and that will fit just nicely on the inside edge there. And I'm just pushing the front and back together as I try that into place so it doesn't fall all the way in, like that. Before we then attach that to our lid, we're going to shape the lid. I'll pop that over there, and we're going to round off each edge and on both sides of the wood. So with your sandpaper flat on your work surface, hold the piece at a 45-degree angle, and as you sweep it towards you, bring it into an upright position. And that will create a nice rounded edge. So do that on each edge of the wood. Like that. And then turn the piece and do the same on the underside. Once you've been all the way around, tidy that piece up in your hand with a piece of finer grade sandpaper to really neaten off the edges. And then what you can also do at each corner is just round over the corner, not too much, but just to take off that sharp point. So we're now going to glue the lid insert to the underside of the lid. And we want to get that in the centre, and you should find that you've got a 6 millimetre or 1/4 inch border around that outside edge. So I'm going to use a couple of pieces of strip wood as spacers, and you just need to put them on 2 sides of the wood. So these are 6 by 3, so 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch. So you just want to put one at the top there and one along the side, and that will help you place it in the centre. And if you get it off centre, it's just going to mean that the lid will look a little bit, wonky once it's actually on the chest. So I've also got my clamps here ready to clamp these pieces together. So apply glue to the insert. Make sure you get it right along the edges, like that, and then sort of place that roughly where it needs to go, but don't press down. And then use your pieces of strip to space it. So one along the long edge, and I'm just using my fingers there to make sure that it's right along the edge. One along the short edge there, and that can actually go over a bit that side. So just get it into position, and then you can give it a firm press and move your spacers. Just press it down for a moment, just because I don't want it to slide about when we pick the piece up. Hold on to it and remove any excess glue. We don't want that to hinder the lid from going all the way down. And then you can clamp that together. I'm going to use these big old clamps. Really press those pieces together. So that can be left to dry. And whilst those pieces are drying, I just want to show you a little idea I had over the weekend. So I've got here some wooden barrels, and I actually ordered these into my Etsy shop a little while ago before I even sort of thought that they would be suitable for the shop. And I actually do a large, a medium and a small, but I've just got here a large and 2 mediums. And I was just sort of trying to think about some different ways of displaying items, just to give lots of different height and lots of different detail in the shop, and I thought these would work really well. So what I'll do is I'll have a couple of them upside down so we can actually have items displayed on top. And then that one will leave actually functioning as a barrel, and we can have something stood inside of it. Not sure what yet. We might do some little fishing nets perhaps, or maybe some garden candles or something like that. Something tall anyway that will sort of stand up like that. And I thought that would create a really nice display. And we could even actually have it stood over here, which will actually be in front of the window, so when the door is closed we'll be able to see whatever is on there through the window as well. So that might look quite good. So I am actually going to paint these, and I'm going to use that same technique that I used for the little crates that we've got underneath the shelving, and we used it on the shutters as well, if you remember. And I just want them to look really sort of old and weathered and beaten up. So I'm going to do that today as well. So I'm applying a coat of paint now to the blanket chest and lid, and I'm using the toucan again, which is that lovely sort of pale blue greeny colour. Now, although I'm going to have the lid on, I do like to apply a coat of paint on the inside as well. And if you ever sort of change your mind at some point in the future and want to do a display in the open blanket chest, then it's already painted. So I decided upon the blue because obviously the base of the bed is done in Vancouver, which is that sort of off-white colour, and I wanted something that would stand out against it. So always have a think about that and try not to sort of put white on white or matching colours together. So that's one coat on those pieces, and they're now drying. And then earlier on I did the camouflage effect on my barrels, and I didn't go through the whole process again just because I've done this in the last couple of episodes. So basically you just apply a base coat of 3 colours, or as many as you like, but 3 works quite nicely, and then you apply a lighter coat over the top and then sand that back to reveal all these lovely colours in different areas. So I'm now going to apply a coat of Vancouver, which again is that lovely sort of off-white, almost like a sort of grey-white. And once that's dried, I can then sand these back to create that lovely weathered effect. So I've applied one rather thick coat of the Vancouver paint to each of the barrels. And then once the blanket chest had completely dried, I gave it a gentle sand using a 500 grade sandpaper. And once you've applied paint to the underside of the lid, you might find it's a little bit tight going back on. So all you need to do is just sand around the edges of the insert just to take a little bit of that paint away, and then you'll find that you should have a really nice fit. Like that. And I'm going to put that into place in the shop. See how that looks, and that will sit just there. I think that looks really good. And now I want to make a start on the coffee table to go in front of our wooden sofa. So for the coffee table, begin by cutting all of the pieces needed apart from the pieces needed for the drawers, which we'll cut once the main unit is constructed, and then we can get an exact measurement. Now with the back and sides of this piece, I've advised cutting so that the shortest edge is in the direction of the grain, and I've done that so that we can score grooves into these pieces just to add a bit of detailing, and we're going to start by doing that. So to make the grooves, we're going to use a flathead screwdriver alongside our steel rule. We're going to begin by making pencil marks for where we want to put the lines. So we're going to do them at 11mm intervals, and that's 7/16 of an inch. So begin by making your little pencil marks along the top and bottom of the piece. Same along the other edge. Turn the piece lengthways. Place the rule just below the pencil marks. And then bring in your flathead screwdriver, and we're just going to use that very sort of tip of the corner of the head there. And we're going to begin by doing a really faint score down the piece of wood. And then you can go in a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper still. And the reason I begin by doing that faint score is that just helps to keep the screwdriver on track. If you go in too heavy to start, you might find that the screwdriver spins off across the piece of wood like that. So work your way down the piece, a light score and then slightly deeper. And when you get close to the other end, turn the piece around and move up to the top again, just so that the rule doesn't rock off the end of the wood. Like that. You can then take a small piece of sandpaper and fold it along a line like that, and then work that along each of those grooves, and that just tidies them up and gets rid of the pencil marks. You can then use a soft brush to get rid of the sanding dust. And then pop that piece to one side. Now with the side pieces, they don't divide by 11, so we're going to begin by doing a little pencil mark in the centre and then to the centre at each side. So do one in the middle there like that, and then go to the centre, to the left and to the right. And then do the same at the bottom edge. Like that, so you'll have 3 grooves to score on each of the side pieces, and then just follow the same technique. So once we've scored the grooves, we're going to attach the mouldings to the back and side pieces. So apply glue to the back of the first moulding. And I've got my spare piece of strip here so that I can push it against the top of the 2 pieces and make sure I've got a nice flush edge along the top. So get that sort of roughly into place, and then you can bring in your spare piece of strip and push both pieces up against it. You know, then you've got that nice flush top edge. Same at the other edge of the wood. Like that. Again, bring that piece of strip in. Press those down. Have a check for any excess glue. Carefully remove that without knocking the pieces out of place. And then I'm just going to grab my clamps. I should have had those ready. And we can then clamp these pieces together. I'm just going to put one at each end like that, as it's such a small piece. It's gone a little bit out of shape, that clamp. Still works though, so that's good. another one there. That piece can then be put to one side to dry, and you can do the same with the back and remaining side. Once the mouldings have dried into place, sand along each edge of each piece to ensure that you've got nice flush sides. So just hold the piece against your sandpaper and go along in the one direction like that. And I've done each of my pieces. And then we're going to attach a leg to each side of each side piece. So apply glue along each side. Pop that back down and then attach it to the first leg, making sure you've got a nice flush edge along the top. Bring the remaining leg in and press that into place. And then again, I'm going to grab my spare piece of strip wood, and we can use that to make sure that we've got that flush line up there. Push all of the pieces up against it. And then bring in your other piece of spare strip wood. And we're going to press those legs into place. I think I said this with the trunk, but that's just with the blanket chest, but it's just a way of making sure that everything's flat and then you're not sort of pulling the legs inward as you press them together. So carefully hold on to that, and you can remove any excess glue. That. And then just carefully slide that piece along your work surface, and that can be left to dry, and you can do the same with the remaining side piece. So whilst those coffee table side pieces are drying, I just wanted to show you that I've sanded back the barrels, and I think they look really good. So I probably will have those down here in front of that window area. We'll still have a window display that will obviously be seen from outside, but I really like the idea of having, you know, things along this first wall so that you don't always have a clear space in the opening when you pull the door open, and then it forces people to have a really good look inside and peer around all the corners into all the sort of little nooks and crannies. And just while we're on that, I've just had another idea as well. In the original plan, I had to have 2 units in the centre there. But again, I feel now that we're sort of starting to fill it up, that it's going to look a little bit too cramped. So I think what we'll have is the same sort of shelves along the back there that we'd planned on originally, but I might just have one central unit in there for display. And that way we're not going to be blocking too much of that back wall. And I think that will look quite good. And then the other thing that I've thought about, also on the original plans, we had a little table which was going to be standing here and here, again to work out in front of the window. So let me just bring that door in, and I'm going to turn it that way. And first of all, I had the thought that we could attach, actually it would be these ones, attach the little table to this door so that it would sort of permanently be sitting below that window. So when we open the door, the table would just sort of stay there with the little display on it. But actually what I've thought is, rather than taking up more room on the shop floor, is that I can just make a couple of window ledges. And we only have to do them probably about 20mm or 3/4 of an inch deep. And then we can do some nice little window displays. I don't think we'll be able to do one there, because if we just peek over the top there, we've got our little boat shelf unit there. And I don't think we'll have room for the window ledge to stick out into that room. So we'll just have them on these 2 windows, which then work out. Just carefully move that out of the way, as being sort of here and here. And then we're not taking up this room, because then we're really going to only have narrow space sort of along there for people to walk. Okay, so let's get back to our coffee table. So now the leg sections are dried, we're almost ready to begin construction, but we've just got a couple of preparations to make first, and we're going to begin by drawing lines down the centre of the top and bottom pieces. So just do a little pencil mark in the centre of each piece. At each long edge of the wood. Turn and join that up. Place the rule just below the pencil line to allow for the thickness of the nib, and then continue that line onto the front and back edge of the piece of wood. So do that with the top and bottom pieces. They're both the same size. And this is for placement of our draw divide. Well, so they can be popped to one side for now, and then bring in the shelf piece. And of the two 2.5mm pieces you've got, the shelf piece is the smaller piece. And we're now going to cut a little section from each corner, which will tuck around the legs of the side pieces. So begin by making a little pencil mark, 5mm or 13/64 of an inch from each edge of the wood. A little mark like that. One at that end, and then at the other side of the wood as well. And then turn the piece lengthways and do another little mark that way, and then you can just square that off, and that's the bit that we're going to be cutting out. Turn and do the same thing at the other end. Like that. So bring in your craft knife, and whenever you're cutting a section from a piece of wood, always cut against the grain first. So obviously the grain runs along the long edge there, so we want to cut this way first. So just using the tip of your knife, just cut out that first little cut line and cut along it. And you're just really snipping along with the tip of the knife there. And we're cutting from a thicker piece of wood as well, so it's going to be a little bit more tricky. Go right along to the edge of the line, and then turn the piece and snip along the grain line. And that's always going to be a little bit easier, like that. Once you've cut, make sure that the square is actually square and that you haven't got any bits sort of overhanging at the sort of bottom edge of the wood. And then the idea of this is that the legs will fit inside it. So you can have a quick check, and if you've perhaps gone a little bit too shy of the 5mm, then just snip a little bit more off, and that should just fit in there nicely like that. So it'll be at the bottom, it'll be slotting the shelf. So do that along each edge or each corner of the wood, like that. And then the other thing to check is just that the sort of cut out end does fit between each set of legs, and try both ends as well. And if you need to do any little adjustments, then do it now before we actually begin construction. You might just need to cut a little tiny bit more off to make sure that they fit in there. And then one more preparation before we begin construction. Put the side pieces face down like that, and we're going to make a little pencil mark, 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of each leg. And again, that's for placement of our shelf piece, just so we've got a little bit of foot overhanging at the bottom. So 3mm, 1/8 of an inch on the inside of the legs. So we're now ready to begin construction, and we're going to begin by attaching the back piece to the back leg of the first side piece. So apply glue along the end of the back piece. And then we're attaching it to the front edge of the back leg, so along the join between the leg and the side piece. And you want to make sure you've got a nice flush top edge there as well. Press that into place. Hold on to it and remove your excess glue. The glue from around the back as well. You know how these things fit together by now, but just showing you there from the top angle. And then bring in your top piece, so that's one of those we've got two of, and one with the pencil line on. And we're going to attach that so that the pencil line's on the inside, and this sits on that inside edge of the joined pieces. So apply glue to your short and long edge. Get it lined up against the side first, or the top of the side, so you've got a nice flush line along there, and make sure it's not overhanging along that front edge. And then what you can do is pull that back piece in to meet it, making sure you've got a flush line all the way up. I think I'm just going off camera up the top there. And then what you can actually do is lay that piece down flat on your work surface. And again, give it a press together. We're now going to bring in the divide, and this will sit centrally over that pencil line, and you can use the little line on the front edge as well to make sure that that is right in the centre. So apply glue to a long and a short edge, and stick that over that line, right up into that back corner. Make sure it's sitting upright as well. Come back that way with it a bit. And then what you can do, actually I can see that's wonky even before I get the ruler. Just to make sure that that is sitting squarely in there, you can bring in your smaller rule and just measure along the back from the divide to the side, and then take that same measurement from the front. And mine is actually needs to go back at the back about 1 millimetre. So reposition. You've got time to move things around before the glue begins to take. And then measure again. But I'm just going to nudge that over with the rule. And that's right this time. So once you're happy with that, remove any excess glue. Look from the front as well, make sure that it looks as though it's sitting upright. And then we're going to attach the bottom piece. And again, pencil line on the inside, and that will sit along the top of the divide and flush with those bottom edges there. So apply glue to a long and a short edge. Also put a bit onto the bottom of the divide. Oops, put the wrong cocktail stick there. And then just lay that piece into place. It will sort of try to seesaw around on the divide. As long as you make sure these sides and this back edge is lined up, and you'll know that it's in the right place. Push it right back to the back as well, so you haven't got any overhanging edges at the front. And then you can just very gently press it along the top of the divide. Give it a press and hold. Leave it to dry off in between steps if you're happier doing that. I always like to rush on, as you know, but you should really leave it to dry, even just for 30 seconds or so, and that will make it solid enough that you can move on without it sort of falling apart or knocking pieces out of place. So now bring in your shelf piece and apply glue into 2 of the little corner cutouts. And then we're going to sit that so it's just above those little pencil lines on the leg there, so that you can just see the pencil lines below those cutouts. And you may need to pick the piece up just to press it against the legs. I don't think mine was a very tight fit this end. I made my cut and then a little chip of wood fell out. So I'm just sort of relying on the cut that's going across the piece to hold that into place there. So again, stand the table on its side and we're going to apply glue to all of these open ends and then attach the remaining side piece. Pop a little bit in the corners of the shelf piece as well. And then bring in your side. Get the top bit lined up first, so you've got that nice flush edge along the front there and a nice flush line along the top. And then push the legs back into the little corners of the shelf and then just really carefully pick it up, a bit fragile at this stage, and just manoeuvre the shelf so that it's sitting just above the little pencil lines that we did on the legs there. Need to come up that side a bit, and then once you're happy with that positioning you can give it a squeeze together, but just be really gentle with it. And then I think what I'll do again is stand this on the side and use a bit of masking tape to attach the side, and then we'll lay it down and put a piece across the front just to really hold it all together. Let's stand that up like that and grab some masking tape. So I'm just going to feed a piece in over the side. So you can get it in like that, stick it to the top and then feed it through and stick it onto the bottom there. And that will hold that top piece of the side into place. Quite difficult to get your fingers in there now, the shelf's there. And then lay it onto the back, and then I'm going to put a piece of tape right across the whole piece. And sort of pull that all together. Like that. Again, gentle squeeze and then attach your tape. And I think I might put a piece over that back edge as well, just to hold the shelf into place at the bottom of the leg there as well, and give us a nice sturdy piece. Okay, so that can now be left to dry. So once you've allowed enough time for the coffee table to dry, remove your masking tape and you can give that a sand around all edges. And I've also sanded face down on my sandpaper in small circular motions, and then you ensure you've got a nice flush front area there. So once we've got to this stage, you can remeasure the drawer openings and cut the pieces needed for the drawers. And as you know, we always get it to this stage first so that we can remeasure the openings and resize the pieces accordingly. And in the cutting list, I've advised that you cut the front pieces of the drawers so that the grain runs along the shortest edge, and that's so we can score grooves into the drawer fronts, just to add a little bit of detail and to make them sort of run in with our side pieces. So I've gone ahead and done that because you know that process by now. And I've done one in the centre and then one in the centre at either side again, just to keep those even along there. So we're now going to construct the drawers. So apply glue along each edge of your base piece. Pop that back down and attach the sides. I'm going to grab my spare pieces of strip wood again. Give those a really good press into place. I'm getting used to which drawer they're in now. Give those a good press along there. Push that along and then we can start with the next one. Same thing again. Make sure you've got those flush edges along the front and back, so we've got a nice surface to attach the front and back pieces to. I think I'm just slightly off camera there. Bring in those strips again. And then when the drawers are drying, we can prepare and attach the top, and then we'll come back and do the mouldings on the drawers. And for those I'm using 1.5mm strip. That's 1/16 of an inch, but if you haven't actually got any strip wood, then you could just cut some strips from your 1.5mm sheet wood, or your 1/16 of an inch sheet. Like that. This one should be dry enough now to attach the front and back pieces. Okay, pop that back down. Attach the back piece first, making sure you've got nice flush edges. And I'm just sort of pulling this one out gently to meet the edge of that back piece. I want to create a nice square box now, otherwise we'll have trouble actually getting it into the opening. And the front piece, and same thing again. Just very gently pull that side out. I'm going to come around that way and give that a good press together, actually holding that side piece out there. So I've got a nice square box. Be careful with your front when you're pressing on it, when you've cut it in the opposite direction, just because it's going to be a little bit more fragile. And you can see there I'm actually just very slightly bending it, so always press at the sides. Always press on those supported areas. That doesn't want to stay, so I'm going to give it a good firm press and hold for a moment, and do the same with your remaining drawer. Come around again and give that a press. So those drawers can now be left to dry, and we can now prepare the top and then attach that. And what I'm actually going to do with the top is just round it off on all edges, turn it over, and do the same on the underside. So with your sandpaper flat on your work surface, just hold the piece at a 45-degree angle, and as you sweep it towards you, bring it into an upright position. And then do that around each side. And I'm just really repeating the instructions just in case you didn't want to make the blanket chest, because this is obviously how we did the lid, and you might just want to skip forward and do the coffee table, so that's why I'm sort of saying it again. But I know by now that you know how to round over and how to bevel and things like that. So once you've been around all edges and on the underside as well, tidy it up in your hand with a piece of 500 grade. And you can also again round over those sharp corners, just really gently. Our top piece is now ready to fit, so apply glue to the top of the coffee table. Make sure you get it right along the edges, and then we're actually going to put this face down onto the top, and the coffee table will sit in the centre of that top piece. Like that. So I've sanded one side, so I'm just check that I've got it the right way around, and then pop the coffee table down onto it so that you're leaving an even border around each edge. So have a look from the top, make sure your corner legs are in the right place, and then everything else should fall into place. Give that a press down, but only on the legs, don't sort of press on your shelf or anything. And then hold on to that and just see if there's any excess glue to be removed. I don't think there is actually, I didn't use too much on there. Pop that the right way around, and I'm going to put a bit of masking tape over and some clamps as well. It's quite wide, so I'll put a couple of pieces over the top. Like that. It's sitting up a little bit at the back, so I'll put a bit over there as well. that, and then I'm going to tuck it underneath like that. And put a bit of over then too. Just make sure it's all being held together, and then it will dry nice and square and solid. And then let me just grab my clamps as well, and we'll get those along the front there. You can see that's trying to lift up already there, so one right in that corner. And I should be able to get a couple in each drawer opening. Like that, and that piece can then be left to dry. Once you've allowed enough time for the top to dry into place, remove the masking tape and then just give the top a gentle sand just to remove any pulls that the tape may have left. Then try your drawers into place, and you may find that you need to do a little bit of gentle sanding to get them to fit inside. If that's the case, just sand a little bit, try again, and then sand more if you need to, but you don't want to take too much off in one go. Now, I had to do a little bit of troubleshooting with this drawer. Even though I measured correctly, when I tried to get it back in, it was very, very tight along the top, so I had to sand quite a bit of way away, and I ended up sanding too much off one side. But luckily, when you're doing a drawer with mouldings, you can actually use the mouldings to cover up any little discrepancies around the front of the drawer, so that you've got a nice, neat and tidy front area. And to do that, I just cut a longer moulding at the top and bottom of the drawer to create a little bit of an overhang that you can see at the back there to fill out that gap. And that's always a good little trick when you're attaching mouldings, to actually attach them to the size of the drawer opening if you've accidentally made your drawer too small, or if you've had to sand to get it to fit back in. So we'll do this one now, and this actually fits nicely into place. And I've done the drawer so that it will go into the opening by the thickness of our moulding. So you'll have a little bit of a table overhanging there at the front of the drawer, and that's right. And this one fitted really nicely, and you normally find that when you're making something with a couple of drawers, one behaves itself and one always plays up a little bit. So we're now going to cut the mouldings to size, and I'm using this 1.5mm 1/16 of an inch strip. And as always, I've given the measurements in the cutting list, but I always prefer to actually cut the mouldings in situ, actually on the drawer front, and that way you get an exact measurement. So line the first moulding up along the top, and then make a little score with your knife. Don't try and cut through. Move that away from the drawer, and then cut the moulding to size. Cut one for the bottom as well. And like I said, this drawer fitted in really nicely, so there's no need to do any little overhanging tricks or anything. As well. And then I'm going to glue these into place, and then we'll actually cut the vertical ones. Glue that into place along the top of the drawer, and make sure you have got a flush line along there. You don't want it overhanging, as again you'll have trouble getting the drawer back in. Same at the sides. I'm actually just going to lay that down onto my work surface and press that down so I know both pieces are flush along the top there. Remove that little bit of excess glue, and then you can attach the bottom one. And then you can bring in the strip again, lay it just above where it will sit, and make your little score again. Move it away from the drawer and cut. And then I always just like to try that into place just before I apply the glue, just to make sure I have got that exact fit there. Yeah, that's a nice fit. I'll cut this one as well. Try that one as well. Yep, and again that's a really nice fit. I'm just going to grab my tweezers to glue these into place. And then for the draw knob on this one, I'm going to be using a cocktail stick, just because I don't want to drill through the front of the drawer. Just because we've cut it in the opposite direction and it's quite weak. So I don't want to risk splitting it at this stage. But if you did want to put a draw knob in there, you can drill your hole before constructing the drawer. Make sure they're sitting right along the sides so we haven't got any overlapping. And then what I want to do before it's all completely dry is just try that into place. And then if you have sort of accidentally overlapped anything, you've still got time to move it. But I'm really happy with that. I'll just pop that one out again. Give those a final press. And then whilst they're drying, I'm going to make a couple of drawer knobs. Put that strip over there. And again, I've done this now in quite a few of the videos, so I'm sure you know how to do it by now. So I've just sanded that into a nice rounded end, and I'm going to cut that off about 2mm in length. If you roll the cocktail stick along under the blade as you snip it, that makes it a bit easier. And then again, bring back in my tweezers. And because we've got that little central groove in the drawer, I'm just going to use that for positioning. And just position it by eye from top to bottom. Like that. So our coffee table is now ready for paint. And for my coffee table I'm going to be using the Vancouver, which is that lovely sort of pale grey, white with a hint of grey. And this is the colour I used for the display unit on the first floor up there. And I thought that would look really nice in front of the colourful sofa. And there's the little completed coffee table. I'm really pleased with that, so let's go put that into the shop. And I'm going to sit that just there like that. And normally obviously you'd have the drawers facing towards your sofa, but because it's a shop setting we're going to have that facing outwards so that the customers can get a good look at the whole table. We'll have that about there so that people can get behind it as well. And as you can see, I've added some crocheted cushions in. Not sure if that's the sort of combinations I'll leave them in, but I'm going to make a couple of fabric ones for the sofa in this same fabric and have one at each end, and then have probably a couple either side of the fabric ones, and maybe a round one in the middle there, just to add that red in on this side as well. And I've been having a play around again. I've moved that shelf from the corner and I've just sort of spread everything along a little bit because I thought it was really looking too crowded and all sort of pushed together. So we've got a little bit of space there, and I thought about making another little occasional table, but this time maybe just a sort of little round table on a stand. You know, so we've got a base and a spindle as a sort of central pole, and then a top, and then we can have some candles on it or a lamp or something. And I actually prefer that layout. So that will be more or less now the furniture layout, and then we can add all those lovely accessories and things in. I've put the little blue doors back up there, or window frames back up there. I just felt that that green was sticking out a little bit too much. And then I've put the green shutters back down on the ground floor, and I've put that little unit that I had stood in the corner on the back wall there. Now again, that might not stay there because we're going to make a couple of more shelving units to go along that back wall. And if you remember, I wanted that one that looked like a cupboard that didn't have its doors any longer. So we'll have that there, and then just another sort of large shelving unit similar to the one that we've got upstairs. And then we'll be having that one counter in the centre there. Well, not so much counter, but, you know, display stand. And then we'll have these in front of the window, so you can actually go right up to that window there. And this is, when I put the door back on, is just as tall as the window ledge. So that will actually look really good to give it a little bit of depth. Whatever we put on there will look like a bit of extra sort of display behind the window display. And I just feel that's a lot cleaner and a lot neater. And as I said before, once you start putting things in, you'll start seeing how they actually look. And even though something looks really good in your plan, and it looks as though there's going to be a lot of room around it, when it actually comes to it, it might look a little bit too crowded. And I think that actually looks nice now. So we've got like a bedroom setting and a living room setting. And we can add all the according accessories there. And then downstairs is more of a sort of the kitchen and homewares sort of bits and pieces. And then we'll have a think about the entrance hall and landing. So there's still quite a bit to do. And I'm really looking forward to getting started on the accessories. And as usual, you know, keep your ideas coming. I've got, you know, quite a few ideas, and we did our little inspiration pictures at the beginning of the episode. But if you come up with anything, don't worry if you think I've already said it, or if it's been said before or suggested by somebody else. Just keep your ideas coming, because we're going to need lots of little accessories to fill the shop. But I'm going to leave it there for today. So in the next episode, we'll get that little corner table made, and then we'll come down onto the shop floor, and we'll hopefully get both of the wall units made and that little central unit as well.
So that's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. Take care. Bye.